Here we are, another week in the leisure vehicle industry, and another week where we see a big name from this industry disappear. So it really is with a heavy heart and sadness that we've learnt this week that yet another dealer from the caravan and motorhome world, the leisure vehicle industry, has sadly called in the receivers. And this one we feel particularly sad about because we have had caravans from them as we set off on our own adventures with caravans and motorhomes. And yes, very sadly, we're saying goodbye to BROADLANE Leisure, who this week, 9th of July, called in the administrators. Now, for those of you who are aware from some of my earlier vlogs, BROADLANE had already stepped back. They had sold off one of their sites to Spinney. They sold off their site at Kenilworth and consolidated down into the site at Ulster. So they'd already made some moves, I think, to try and weather the challenges out there in the caravan and motorhome world right now, and particularly with caravans. There's a real stagnation in that market. And I've been doing a little bit of research into what's gone on with BROADLANE, and I'll explain a little bit more of that in a moment. But why do I feel quite sad about this one in particular? Well, they've been in the industry for over 50 years. Darren and Steve, who were running the business, and their father Colin beforehand, set this up in the early 70s. They'd recently celebrated their 50th anniversary, big rebrand, relaunch, and have been a mainstay of the industry for many, many years. Big player at the caravan shows at the NEC and the Malvern show as well. But sadly, yes, receivers, administrators called in, and it does make you wonder what has been going on. But we had our first caravan from there years back. We bought our very first Sprite Alpine, which was our little two-berth starter caravan that we had when we started going off doing our touring. And then we did go back to them and had our second caravan, and we upgraded then to one of their dealer specials, which was the Swift Fairway, and this was an ex-demonstrator we bought from them actually, so it's fairly, for us, it was like an almost new caravan, and on both those occasions we had real good customer service, both from the sales staff but also from the directors themselves, being quite hands-on and involved, particularly in the sale of the first one that we had. I remember talking to Darren Brown, who was the director at that time, welcoming us into the world of touring and paying a real interest in what we were doing and what we were buying. And we were always made to feel welcome when you visited the sites that they had. So that makes it particularly sad for us. And I'll pop a couple of photos in here of our caravans we had, and also the site as we saw it at the time. Now, what we liked about BROADLANE was that they were one of the first dealers to basically introduce the dealer special, and their father, who started the business, worked with Swift to develop the Fairway. I think that came from their golfing backgrounds as a family. That's where the name stemmed from, and put together the Swift Fairway as it was 28 years ago, I think it is now, which was a model then that followed across many other dealers, with dealer specials becoming a thing. So yeah, very sad to see this go. So before I talk about the specifics of BROADLANE, let's just talk about what's going on in the industry and how it operates, and how that is having an impact on some dealers that can't weather this slowdown in the market. Now, if you follow other channels here on YouTube, you might follow the caravan industry expert, Andy Jenkinson, or you might follow Atlantic Caravans, who also give some really good perspective on the industry right now. And I'll pop links to both of those down below for you. You'll know that sales have slowed down significantly. And what I perhaps didn't fully appreciate was the way that dealers have to take their stock, and dealers have to have a credit line, if you like, with the manufacturers for a number of caravans that they have either as display models or their stock that they've got to sell for the year. And I think this is where the challenges come for some of the smaller dealers, and these could be the well-established ones like we've just seen with Broadlane, in sitting on a number of vehicles that are older stock and not being able to get them through and sold before they accrue interest and have to start heavily discounting and in effect eradicating any profit margin that they've got. So that is a thing that's going on. Now, I'm no expert in this field, but clearly where we've had dealers who've sat on 22 stock coming into 23, 23 stock coming into 24, and there is a raft of 24 stock before we're heading into the 2025 model year. You can see this squeeze coming in, perhaps on dealers that haven't got the affordability or the money in the bank to kind of buy them out of this situation. And it was interesting watching the recent vlogs from Atlantic Caravans, where they've stepped away as a dealer from being a main dealer and just dealing in used, and have perhaps had a bit of foresight there of what's coming on. But it certainly does present a bit of a challenging space for the industry where sales have slowed down so much. Now, you can quickly get in the comments, and I really don't mind what your views are on this. We all have them, and these are just views, but there is a pricing issue, there is an oversupply issue. Many people, both within the industry and as buyers, talk about the COVID bubble and the boom that came with that. I think some have called it the COVID bounce, where as we've come out of it, the oversupply of used stock back into, and people not replacing with new. Some dealers probably made good during that time, but are now facing the challenge coming this side, particularly where they had a shortage of supply of vehicles, that some customers had to knock on their delivery dates, that perhaps they're not in a normal replenishment cycle for their vehicle. You know, some people who change it every 4 or 5 years perhaps had to wait an extra year or two, so therefore aren't coming forward now to change their vehicle. It's compounding the situation. So it's in a real hothouse of challenge, if you like, right now. And yeah, prices of everything have gone up, but particularly you see that with the cost of caravans, and even some of the used ones still, the price point that some of them are at, it's not the most affordable thing right now, and is a luxury for many. So, you know, that is a consideration. And the manufacturers, well, they're still churning them out, and they're still expecting their dealers to commit to buying future stock. So there isn't a slowdown in the supply chain, but there certainly is this flip between the seller's market and the buyer's market, because supply certainly isn't outstripping demand. Is that the right way around? Demand isn't outstripping supply, that there isn't enough buyers for what the manufacturer is still chucking out. So that's interesting. So let's have a think about what has gone on specifically with Broadlane. What we really did like about Broadlane was it was a family business in its truest sense. There were generations of the Browns working through. Their knowledgeable staff and their attention to detail and care was always really notable, and this is why people did go back year after year for their vehicles from Broadlane. They had a great showroom, they had a great setup, they had a great accessories shop. They offered a good range of products for your vehicle itself that could be fitted. You know, the aftermarket stuff was always there. The after sales side was really strong. The servicing and aftercare very, very, very good. And again, very knowledgeable experts and technicians within that team. We also like that they just have a good range of vehicles, you know, a good selection across spread, if you like, from different manufacturers in their used side, but also as a key Coachman, Swift, Ariba, Mink dealer. They always had a good stock and a good variety of both the core ranges, if you like, from those manufacturers, but also the dealer specials that ran both across the Coachman and the Swift range. So yeah, things to be mindful of now though. Obviously the administration notice is up, so you need to be mindful if you are an existing Broadlane customer that you're going to have to contact the manufacturers to organise where you might need to go for any servicing or warranty work if you've bought recently new vehicles. And obviously the administrator's details are available, and I've dropped that in here for you. Should you be in the middle of buying a vehicle, in the middle of a part exchange, or have got a contract in place, then you know it's the administrators you will need to contact to sort yourselves out. So just follow the advice and the guidance you get there if you are a current Broadlane customer. Well, specifically with Broadlane, you can track back some of the challenges already starting to present when you look at their company accounts that were filed in January 2023. In here, the directors outline some of the challenges in that post-pandemic world and this COVID bounce, where they've seen a lot of leisure vehicles returning to market as people are stepping out of them. And they also saw that they were sitting on a lot of 2022 stock coming into the 2023. And in those company accounts that are online, you can see here that directors are warning that they can't let that repeat in 2023. Now, interestingly, we know that has been the case because Broadlane was sitting on quite a lot of models as they were coming out of the 23 into the 24 cycle. And before the website closed under administration, you did see that they were heavily discounting and putting on sale a number of their 2024 models because they would be on track for the 2025 coming through very soon. So history, I think, there has repeated itself and has put a pressure on because the heavy discounting, the interest rates that come through on the company loans, if you like, through the Swift and Coachman and the dealers from the manufacturers, that will be having an impact if they're sitting on those vehicles and can't afford to buy them into their own stock. So there's been a challenge there. You will know from Broadlane, if you know of them, that during the pandemic time they diversified. They branched off and developed their Camperway brand, which became VW conversions. Now, these were not cheap, shall we say. They're quite a luxury item for what they are. And they were churning them out at a rate at a time, but then were beginning to sit on a lot of stock of those as the market became flooded with VW conversions across the UK. Lots of converters were popping up. Now, that was also alluded to in these accounts back in January 23, where they were saying that they've got to keep a close eye on this. And slowly, as the company has restructured over the last 12 months or so, that Camperway brand has drifted off and gone. It wasn't delivering the returns anymore that it once was. And the other thing that was flagged in the company accounts of that time was the branching out into Mink. If you remember, Mink was the little yellow, basically it's like a double bed on wheels with a little pull-out sink at the back. The Mink little camper that you could tow on the back of virtually any vehicle. They branched out into those, and they branched out into Aribas. Not many Ariba dealers across the UK, but they did branch out into those, which again are a heavy price point for the vehicle that they are, and would have to carry a certain number of stock. And these accounts back in January 2023 allude to the COVID bounce and a slowdown in the sales and turnover that they needed with the Ariba vehicles as well. So they were pulling away. So I think those early signs, if you track back through those accounts, really show that the challenges and the struggles were probably already well in traction. Turnover wise, as a company, they were probably still doing okay, but as that impact of that 22 going into 23, 23 into 24, in sitting on a lot of stock, and they are sitting on a lot of caravans and motorhomes, yeah, you can see how that chain reaction was going. You know, it gathers pace, and it's just really, really sad. As I said earlier on in the vlog, the team there were just fantastic, so knowledgeable, so insightful, so helpful. It was properly a family business. And yeah, going to be very sad to see that one go. Now, I'm planning to pop out another little vlog for you next week. I've done a little bit more research on the back of this, on where the market is at for motorhomes. And this is an interesting space because there are some big discounts coming through, and there's certainly a noticeable slowdown and an availability of stock now sitting in dealers, and a couple of examples where the discounting is coming quite thick and fast. So look out for that next vlog next week.